Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I'm joined today by Osceola senior writer Kurt Weiler, FSU senior writer. Listen, fun weekend in Tallahassee. Florida State came out and brought the brooms out last night and got rid of Mississippi State, Northeastern, and who was the other school? I can't remember at this point. Bethune-Cookman. Yeah, I think they only played Mississippi State and obviously Bethune. But yeah, listen, that game last night was entertaining on all sorts of levels. Highly, very chippy game, I guess you could put it that way. Biggest takeaways I got coming out of this series, Kurt, is if Florida State's pitches like this in the Super Regional, there's a really good chance with that offense they got behind it that this team could be headed back to Omaha. Of course, there's a lot of work to do still. We'll find out more about that later tonight. But when Oregon State takes on USC, I believe that is a 6 o'clock first pitch on ESPNU or ESPN2. I've got that information somewhere, but I think there's going to be a lot of USC fans in Tallahassee tonight. That would bring the super regional to Tallahassee. But let's go with just your thoughts overall, Kurt, on you were there all weekend, camped out at the stadium for most of the weekend. Just your thoughts on Florida State's performance as a whole. And then I guess probably more what people want to hear about is that final game.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I kind of go where you went at first talking about, Link Jarrett kind of nailed it. I'm working on a story. It'll be up on the site either tonight or tomorrow about Link Jarrett said in the preseason that he thought this team was going to be built on run prevention, and that's run prevention on the mound, and that's run prevention with an athletic, consistent defense. And I think you saw both those over the weekend. Florida State didn't commit a single error in their 3 games. They allowed 7 total runs. They got, a rain-shortened start from Joey Vellini, but an exceptional quality start from Jamie Arnold. A career best start last night from Wes Mendez. The bullpen combined for 9 scoreless innings. It was, it's hard to ask for much more than what they got from everyone. And like you said, the offense, I think Link knew he didn't need this offense to be like last year. They didn't need to mash time in and time out. It was kind of the belief that things would happen. And last night's kind of the summation of that. Time and time again, they squandered chances. It was a really interesting night. I can't remember many times a coach being thrown out in the second inning especially the second inning of such an important game. It definitely felt like the home plate umpire lost that one a lot. And that kind of when you do that early in the game, it went chaotic. Just like the intensity and emotion of that game got ramped up so quickly. But for a while, it felt like Florida State was never going to come through. I think they stranded 12 runners, were 0 for 9 with runners in scoring position in the first 6 innings, and then finally in the 7th tied up on Cal Fisher's homer, and then come through with 3 in the 8th after loading the bases with no outs. It's the thing where Link did not – it was definitely not one of those he got thrown out to try and light a fire type things, but it sure felt like it lit a fire of their coach being thrown out with how much that team loves him. And I just had a feeling, and obviously it wasn't a sure thing. I just had a feeling at some point they were going to finally come through, and it was a game they were going to win after how that situation with Link played out. Mississippi State, a very good team, but Florida State, a better team. There's a reason they're hosting that regional. Mississippi State was the 3 seed, and it played out that way. It was impressive to watch. I am thrilled personally, selfishly, that I get to stay at home and watch all the other games today. I don't have to go cover a game tonight.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone is. Everybody's breathing a little easier on the Florida State side. Now, I did just check out Oregon State scores. They put up 34 runs in their last 2 games.
They didn't save any, right? They didn't save any. They used them all up yesterday. Should have saved a few.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that game plays out. But yeah. Going back to the Link thing, I know there was some conjecture on the board that maybe he intentionally got tossed. I agree with you. I do think it lit a fire underneath this team, and I think he may have gone out to argue his point to try to build a little fire, but I do not think he meant to get thrown out. And
no, you saw his reaction when he got thrown. That it seemed pretty clear. He reacted of like, "Are you kidding me?" That it was not his intent.
Well,
he was absolutely defending. He said post game basically like he credit to Link for talking. He wasn't obligated to talk because basically he only managed 2 of the games. They kind of give a coach a pass there where an assistant coach could go in their stead, but it made Link's going to talk. Link said basically before the regional with all the teams, kind of a sportsmanlike conduct, like point of emphasis was made of like, if you do X, Y, Z, there can be repercussions. And Link felt that was crossed. I think some words and actions and gestures were pointed at the hitter, and also I think at the dugout from the hole by Carson Ligon, and Link stood up for his guys. And I think that's what you would want your coach to do in that situation. And he I think wanted the umpires to all meet to maybe discuss, like, was that past the line of like, we maybe need to do something with the Mississippi State starter, and they refused to do it, and Link didn't back down. And I'd be surprised if Link said something that crossed the line. That's not really his MO. He is a mild-mannered man who I can safely say I don't think I've ever heard curse being around him a decent amount in a media capacity. And so it just felt like the Joe Burleson had enough and tossed him, and it was pretty surprising.
Well, I will say this, and listen, I'm fine with Link going out there and arguing a call. I like to see the managers get after it a little bit every now and then. And I think you should defend your team. Now, I will say this, and if you go back and watch the television copy, you will see where the umpire clearly has told Link, all right, conversation's over. I'm going back to home plate. You need to go back to your dugout.
He turned his back to him.
And Link continued to go. And I think whatever Link said, whatever he said after that. Now, listen, I am going to say this. We talk about it all. I watched a lot of baseball with a group on Thursday nights, and we usually meet to watch Florida State games since I don't go in person. Listen, this whole thing with sportsmanship in baseball, the coaches actually have control of this. And there's no and I don't want to get into a long-winded – there's too much of it going on in college baseball.
Sure.
Listen, I said this jokingly all the time. Florida State's got a guy that does a dance on second base every time he hits a double. I want to see that guy do 10 push-ups at the next time he strikes out in the batter's box if we're going to do that. But, yeah, listen, I think these coaches and their individual teams that need to get control of this, that's clearly not going on. Link controls his team. Mississippi State's coach controls his team.
Yeah.
You got the head coaches have more control over this rules than anybody else in baseball. Should not be left up to the umpires. These head coaches should be able to get their teams under control. And we've seen Florida State struggle with it, and you see it weekly in college baseball. Now, that's just my soapbox. I got one for a little.
But I'll say – We saw, I mean, I think people thought Max Williams was towing that line of getting thrown out of a game for quite a while, and he finally did. And I think Link kind of owned after his role of like, maybe we let this go on a little too long or something to that effect. And since that happened, you have noticed it feels like a difference with Max. I'm sure he had a talk to Max. Other people have their moments. Everyone, I mean, the pimping of home runs, the bat flips and all is just become a part of baseball. But Max was the one who took it to the most extreme.
Yeah.
But the truth is, once Link's thrown out there, I mean, you saw Wes Mendez go back on the mound and I think retire the 1-2-3 the next inning. It had a lot of emotion cut off the mound. It's like, well, when you, the umpire, just did that, you escalated this situation to where the intensity is so high. Like, it starts with the coaches, but umps doing rash things like that can take it to the level where it was kind of at for the rest of the night. And I mean, a Mississippi State hitter and assistant coach got thrown out in the ninth for arguing balls and strikes. I think I found a story. We don't need to make a thing out of it. The home plate umpire's he's been an umpire for 45 years. I think it might be time to hang up the chest protector. That's a long time. You could make a case that just like the game passes players by, it might pass the umpires by, and Joe Burleson might be there.
I agree. And listen, I'm not taking exception to what Link did. We're talking about a bigger conversation.
For sure.
It seems to be an epidemic in baseball, and I'm not sure that you can make the switch in the postseason to have those rules enforced, which I think it sounds like was an in-season emphasis placed on this as the season went along. I think they need to get rid of listen, I like some of the entertainment, but it's just like I was watching the Southern Miss game, and all the guys come out of the dugout, and the guy that hits the home run goes down on a knee, and that's like he's taking a picture of his teammates celebrating. It's all crazy. It's all over baseball. And listen, let's either that or let's do what they do in hockey. Let these two kids fight. let the pitcher and the batter meet halfway between.
They're not wearing pads and helmets. I mean, it's the batters wearing a helmet.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of a mob mentality thing, right? So anyway, I digress.
The funniest to me is when you see the bullpens always, like, if they clear, the bullpens run in. And it's like they're like running next to each other, like we're about to have to go fight. We got to run next to each other to run in, like, you know. It's
and
like
always got the
we
guy
clearly don't want to do it, but we feel obligated to do it.
The guy that stays in the back of the pile,
yeah.
Sure. But yeah, it was an entertaining game, and of course, Max Williams had that hit that I think ended up being the game-winning RBI, and he had been struggling earlier in the game. Miles Murphy I know you wrote an article. You said timing was works in your favor sometimes, and you had written the article of Miles Murphy, who I think had hit home runs in 5 consecutive games, and I don't think he got a hit last night, but they didn't need it.
He had a hit. A homer streak ended, I think, at 5 straight games, but he did have a hit.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So where are you on this? Who do you want to see? I think there's a decided advantage. I know that you do too, with being able to play the regional at home versus going on the road, particularly going all the way across the country to Oregon. And I don't know how much you've had time to even look at either of the two teams that Florida State could eventually play, but let's just factor out where you're playing, which I know you can't do, but who would you prefer for them to play even if it was a neutral site? Who would you rather see Florida State? And it's not, but I'm just asking a question.
I mean, it's probably USC regardless, just from a standpoint of, I mean, Oregon State's a weird situation. You don't know entirely what to make of them because they went fully independent this year with the Pac-12 dissolving. I think they only played 19 home games. A large part of why they were so high in the RPI, why they got the 8 seed over Florida State, is because they played such a unique schedule, so many games on the road, so many neutral sites. I mean, they're battle tested, and it is like, frankly, if Oregon State had to pick any one sport to be like they are a day school, they're probably a baseball school. They won the national title, I think, in 2018. They have been consistently in the mix there. I mean, they are a baseball power. That is a place. I mean, you do have to factor in it would be a hostile atmosphere. Now, I think this team is capable of going on the road and winning a super regional. They're capable of beating Oregon State regardless. I think the wild card of Oregon State is a team that played such a unique schedule that didn't play in a conference, didn't play as hard a schedule as Florida State did, as an SEC team did. So, like, that maybe is the other side of it. I mean, they lost their game Friday. They lost their opener. They've won 3 straight to get to tonight's, if necessary, game at 6. But, I think it's still, I mean, you definitely want the team that's perceived to be less, that is USC. And obviously the undeniable factor is, I mean, you saw the Hauser effect this past weekend. You want the Hauser effect again if you can have it, if it's on the table, which it is if USC wins.
Well, yeah. No, listen, they Oregon State and USC did play last night. Oregon State got after them pretty good, 14-1. Now USC had beaten St. Mary's and TCU in actually inverse order to get to Oregon State, and obviously Oregon State they scored 34 runs on Sunday. That's really impressive. I don't care who you're playing.
It is.
It looked like a football score, 20-3 against St. Mary's. So you're right. If you're Florida State fans, you got to hope that Oregon State's bats are going to cool off relative to what they've done yesterday, and obviously USC, who only allowed 1 run against TCU, and then only 4 against St. Mary's. Up until they done well the first 2 days. So, and you would think that they're coming back around to one of probably the guy that pitched on Friday night, I would think. I don't know who their starter is, and I don't think anybody on here does. But anyway, it's going to be fun to see what happens tonight. And that game is at 6:00 on ESPN. It says Plus. I think it's going to be on one of the channels. I just don't know if it's ESPNU, ESPN2.
It says U, I'm seeing.
Okay, ESPNU at 6:00. So if you're a Florida State fan and want to start either booking your hotel rooms in Corvallis or Tallahassee, you will know probably about 9:00 tonight. And listen, I did not realize that they were going to start this bracket for Super Regionals will actually not be decided until the wee hours of tomorrow morning.
What do you mean?
You got games that kick off at 9:00 tonight.
Oh yeah. LSU was a pretty stunning upset last night. Miami plays late. Yeah, it will be. And some of the teams will turn around and play Friday. It's a quick turnaround of some teams are playing into late Monday, and Super Regional. I think 4 of them will start Friday, 4 of them will start Saturday. We'll see what day Florida State ends up on, but it's definitely a benefit for Florida State, especially if they have to factor in a cross-country flight, that they get an extra day off. They don't have to play today to risk their season being on the line.
Yeah, I can't listen. At least I know where I'll wake up at 3:00 in the morning. I will wake up on the couch because I'll be watching all this baseball tonight. And it's been a really great regional around the country. Now, I do want to, we are a Florida State centric podcast. One of our favorite coaches made a kind of a jackass out of himself yesterday up in coastal Carolina. Our good old boy Kevin O'Sullivan, man, did you see the video on that?
Yes.
Him berating the operations manager for the regional because the game got. Listen, I've never heard a good thing about that guy. Like, he seems to be like a not good human. That was a former coach that he was talking like that to.
Yeah, and apparently he was talking to Coastal's people. He was talking to ECU's people when, like, the NCAA made the call. It was all about the game time got pushed back an hour because ECU had played until, like, close to midnight the night before. ECU had played a very late game. Like, they did the same thing here Friday night because of weather. Northeastern and Mississippi State played till close to midnight, so they pushed back that first Saturday game to 1 p.m. just to give them an extra hour. They knew about it in the morning. They didn't, like, spring it on them, and it became some big thing. You watch the video, too. The video is worth watching of the Coastal coach after they beat ECU. Yeah. They advanced yesterday talking about – I don't think name dropped him, but it was very clear who he was talking about and sticking up for his people who he felt were wronged by what Kevin O'Sullivan had done.
And Kevin O'Sullivan is – listen, he's got to be smart enough, and maybe he's not because he certainly didn't act smart yesterday.
I'm not sure he cares. Doesn't seem like it.
He's got to understand that those 4 guys that you were talking to were not the only guys involved in the decision, right? There's television to consider. These games are going to be televised.
None of them might have been involved. A lot of that comes from the NCAA telling them, hey, we're going to give you an extra hour. It's not like this. It's no one person there on site saying, let's do this. It is, it's coming from above all of their heads. But he just needed somebody to be angry at, and he picked like 7 different people.
Well, did you see? I don't know. I watched their first game, and he, without being provoked, he came out of the dugout, got on the umpire, something about the pitch clock. And anyway, he embarrassed himself, embarrassed the program. But he's not a good guy, but that was a bad look for Florida. And I hope they, either the SEC, the NCAA, or Florida will do the right thing and suspend him, fine him, do something. That was ridiculous. All right. So let's go back to Florida State baseball. Anything come out of the press conference that you attended last night that you felt like was something people would want to know about? Anything that was said by any of the kids? I know Mendez was up there. I believe Max was there, if I'm not mistaken, and Link.
I was interested. I think I'm writing something else this week. I'm kind of planning out my week of stories to write on. Wes Mendez is a guy. He did not throw many innings last year at Ole Miss. It feels like I don't have his inning total this season in front of me. Yeah. He has blown by how many seasons, like the most he'd ever thrown in a season. It might be like a last few years combined type thing, how many he's thrown for Florida State for this point. He started – I think this was start 15 or 16, somewhere in that range. He's well up there now. And he just keeps getting better. That was his best start of his career. He the last 4 or 5 weeks, really, I think, has been FSU's second best pitcher. I think Joey Vellini also has thrown a lot of innings, and Joey hasn't been outright bad, but I think Wes has been more consistent. I think Wes talked a little about, how he how he feels like he just keeps getting better the more he goes. It took a little while to ramp up, and he was good. He hit a rough patch, but he has worked through it in a big way. It makes me wonder how they approach pitching next weekend in the best of 3 Super Regional. Whoever they're playing, wherever they're playing, you're only guaranteed 2 games. I think you can make a compelling case that you should throw Jamie and Wes each on a day less rest. If it were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it'd be a day less rest. If it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you give the full week of rest. But throw your guys who have been your 2 best recently in those 2 only games are guaranteed, and kind of figure out the rest.
Yeah, I'm kind of pulling for a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's what I like to see.
I think so. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on this. I believe it might be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because I think they do it by sides of the bracket. Last year, the 4 teams who played in Omaha on Friday, their super started the Friday before. The 4 teams who played on Saturday played their super starting on a Saturday. Florida State's on the left side of the bracket again in the 8-9 game, if you will. So, it's I think if that holds again, they'll play on Friday, but I think we'll find out for sure tonight or probably late tonight, I would imagine.
And I guess I hope it's Saturday, particularly if they have to travel. We'll see
for sure
how that pans out, and hopefully we'll have.
They'll go soon. They'll probably go tomorrow or Wednesday if they have to go. If it's Friday, they might go tomorrow. Honestly.
Well, and if it's home, we'll have Kurt and Lulu back on Wednesday to talk a little bit more about either USC or Oregon State. Get a little preview. Obviously, if the team is traveling. Lulu will be traveling. Kurt, I'm not sure if you're going out there or not. If they advance,
I don't believe I will be in Corvallis. I haven't talked to the boss man, but not under the belief that I will be making that trip.
Well, that's too bad. It'd be a great trip to go on. But
I was in Portland last summer, and I really enjoyed it. I tell you, I enjoyed Portland.
I've never been. I'd love to go. I'd love to go out to Oregon, all that coastline, the Oregon coast, and all of that. But yeah, so we'll be back on Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll have Kurt and Lou. We'll talk a little bit more about whoever Florida State will be playing. We'll do a little bit more research on them. Kurt, I appreciate it, bud. We're gonna have Nick jump in, and we're gonna talk a little football recruiting as Florida State had its first official visit weekend of the season, of the official visit season this past weekend. So, Kurt, we will see you on Wednesday, and I'm going to pop Nick in here. Nick, what's going on?
See you, Nick.
How's it going on, everybody? What's going on? How are you? You haven't been out to the West Coast, or not the West Coast, but
I've been out I've covered. I've been out to San Diego, LA a bunch. Not to the Northeast, no.
I went to Seattle when I was still in high school for a trip, and I actually really liked it. It's a really unique kind of geographical and like social area. The only downside was that it was raining all the time. Yeah, it was raining all the time, and it was kind of overcast out. But we did that, and we went to Alaska. I think it was a high school graduation trip that I went on.
Yeah,
but it's real nice.
Furthest north out west I've got is Reno. I spent about 45 minutes on the tarmac at Sacramento because the winds were too strong to land in Reno. We had to fly to Sacramento, then fly back over the mountains to Reno. But that's as far as I've gotten. But yeah, we're hoping that Florida State plays here. So did you sleep at the Moore Center last night?
No, I didn't. I was back in my own bed, thank goodness. But it was definitely a long day on campus yesterday. A long day for us, and I can imagine a long day for the coaches as well, who were finishing up official visits as early as 8:00 in the morning. And then
you know what? They
hosting more kids.
Than you and I do. I don't feel sorry for them at all.
Yeah, well, and then of course, hosting a bunch of 2027, 2028, and some choice 2026s for elite camp up until around 6:30. So long day on all fronts.
All right. So let's jump into it. Florida State did host 6 people on a 2026 prospects on official visits. They had a surprise unofficial visit. We'll get into that as well, and then we've got some other updates. But I think probably, Nick, the headliner coming into this weekend, and it is our lead story at theosceola.com right now, is the FSU seems to be trending in the right direction with 4-star defensive tackle Kendall Gervell. What is your take? I know you spoke with him. I've read your article, but I did not speak with him. Texas was considered the front runner, a big front runner coming into this weekend. He had a lot of positive things to say. What did he say, and what is your take on the Kendall Gervell situation with Florida State?
Yeah, Florida State made up some good ground this weekend with Gervell. I think what was really interesting is the very first thing that he said in the interview was that he was a little bit skeptical about his official visit to FSU. He didn't know a ton about the program despite visiting in March, and he had some reservations about whether or not Florida State was a school that he would be seriously interested in. And at the very least, he left Florida State having some of his questions answered. And I think Florida State has made ground here. I don't think it's enough to cement where Florida and Texas are in his recruitment right now. He straight up said Texas and Florida are still the top of the top group of schools. But I think the good news for Florida State is that he's not looking to decide this summer. He's going to be deciding on National Signing Day in December. So there is plenty of time for Florida State to continue to chip away in this recruitment. You and I said last week before he got here that we both felt like he's a kid that's going to wind up at an SEC school. I don't think that's changed. I don't think that's changed coming out of this visit. But you have to feel encouraged if you're Florida State that you were able to host him. You were able to get some one-on-one time between him and defensive line coach Terrence Knighton. And you also have to feel comfort in the fact that if things go according to how he has it planned right now, he's going to be deciding in December, and you're going to have the opportunity to host him for a couple of game day visits. He's already expressed interest in coming back for the Alabama game and a couple of other home games if they work out on his schedule, because he's not too terribly far away from campus.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said. I do think that I think it's good that Florida State has gotten more involved in this one. He's certainly a talented prospect. I think like when we say this a lot, we ought to probably just have it written as a disclaimer at the bottom of our screen.
Tattooed on our foreheads, maybe.
Some of this will depend on how Florida State does on the football field in 2025, meaning how many games did they win? What direction does the football team look like it's going in? Has Mike taken pressure off himself? And there's more pressure going into 2026. All of these things. Can they win enough to where any difference in NIL can be offset by the fact that Florida State is trending in the right direction as a program? There's a lot of smoke out there about Texas is going to spend $40 million this year on their roster. That's hard to compete against. I don't care who you are. Will they spend that much next year? All those things are part of this puzzle with Kendall, but good for Florida State. It's good that it went well. I think we'll talk a little bit about this later, but it certainly seems like Terrence Knighton had a good day with Kendall, and there's been a lot of talk about that. His recruiting prowess on our site and around the program, around the beat anyway. So, but so it looks like they took a step forward with Kendall. That's great. And I agree with what you said. I think they still got some work to do. And you and I both agree that some of that work is going to have to be done. What kind of product is Florida State putting out on the field in 2025 as Kendall gets ready to make his commitment in December?
Let me ask you, do you think, and I know that there has been a lot of important games that Mike Norvell has had to coach in his tenure here. Obviously, ACC championship game, that string of games after Jordan Travis got hurt. Is the upcoming game against Alabama the most important game that Mike Norvell would have coached in recent memory, considering how the coming off of last season, how many recruits are going to have their eyeballs on that game? The official visitors that are going to be there. There's 2 or 3 that have already expressed that they're going to officially visit on that date. Is the Alabama game the most important game that he's going to? Yeah, Trenton Henry. Is the Alabama game the most important game that Mike's going to have? That he's coached in recent memory?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, and at one point it's very easy, another it's very difficult. Yes, Nick, I guess because it's the first game and the next game all the same one, and you're coming off a 2-10 season, and people want to see what kind of strides you made as a program, and everybody thinks that Alabama's coming in here as one of the top programs in the country. So it's going to some people, it's going to gauge where Florida State is. I certainly think a bad loss or a big win make it much more important than, hey, ho-hum, any win would be, I think you might argue it's the biggest win if he gets it in his tenure at Florida State because of what they're coming off of. I think a bad loss would further the damper expectations for Florida State under his leadership. But a win of any kind, so I think it's kind of a nuance because, right, you go there, you get 2 easy games to win after that, and then you go to Virginia, then Miami comes to town. So then Miami comes the next. But I will agree with this. I think that Alabama is one of his most 4 important games on the schedule next year. But a win makes it the most important. Probably makes it the most important on the schedule for the season, and a significant loss probably makes it even much more so. So, but yeah, it's a big game.
Yeah, because I mean, you and I, we joked about it, like making a motto of the show at this point. We say nearly every show how important the performance of the team in season is, and getting off to a good start against Alabama, even if you keep the game close and say lose like 25-23 or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, you reported the other day that Keyshawn Henderson is going to take an official visit. I'd say the same thing about him. For Keyshawn to take them seriously, they have to look like a much better offense than they did last year. And so while the NIL component is going to be very important because, Houston's got money, I do think that what Florida State does on the field is going to have a huge impact on that recruitment. So, yes, and, there's going to be a ton of kids watching that game at 3:30 on August 30th. And it's hard to believe that, Nick, 60 days out from now, Florida State will have been in camp for a couple of days. So this season is rolling up on us. I think somebody put this weekend, we were 13 weeks from Saturday from the start of Florida State's football season, or the first week of college football. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but I think I don't want to overstate the importance of that game, but because I do think how it plays out will determine how important that game is on the schedule. But listen, certainly a lot of people, particularly now that we're in the portal era, are going to think, and you should be able to rebound from a 2-10 season quicker in the portal era than you did in just the high school, when you can only bring high school and junior college kids into your program. So, but a lot of eyes. I know we're all looking forward to it, and I've already written a preview on Alabama. I can't wait. So we've already got a summer school preview there. So anyway, yeah. So it's going to be an important game, no doubt. All right. So let's go to let's go to Camden Capehart. Now, this Florida State is definitely in it on Camden. He is the wide receiver from Texas that was on an official visit, Nick, and I actually talked to him, did his interview out there yesterday, and basically what he has told us is this is a battle between Mississippi State and Florida State. UCLA is trying to get in the mix. They're trying to get him to take an official visit out to LA. Right now, he's only got one scheduled for June 14th. Told us afterwards that he would make his decision after the official visit to Florida State, Mississippi State. Right now, he does not have one set for UCLA, so it does look like a two-team race. He said all the right things. I think this is where he ends up if he's a take for Gus Malzahn and Tony White. Tim Harris. Tim Harris. And so I think that, the kid's quick. He was a 3A 100 meters champion in the state of Texas this spring. I think he's probably a kid, to be honest with you, that's going to get some traction late. But right now, I like where Florida State stands with him. And I think that this is one where, and the way I read the tea leaves, where Florida State holds the cards in this recruitment, I think that he's probably a guy that will flip if Florida State will take his commitment.
Yeah, and that's really the $1 million question is, does Florida State view him as a take, and truly view him as a take? Mississippi State got in there really early. I mean, he committed, I think, in November. So like way before, many were really thinking about the 2026 class. And I agree with you. I think that his profile, his stock is going to continue to grow. Excuse me, throughout the rest of the summer into the fall. I just have my doubts on where he is on their board right now. I think I don't want to necessarily say that it's a fallback option, but I think they have better options on the board available right now, unless they feel like Camden is truly a prospect that offers something that they really cannot find anywhere else. And he is certainly he's small and he's certainly fast. I mean, we were sitting out there and he looked like a soccer kid. I don't think anybody recognized him. And then we realized, oh, wait a minute, that's Camden. And then we rushed over to talk to him, and that's everybody that was out there, multiple sites included. But no, I think that there's a good chance that he ends up at Florida State. I think this is more on more on Florida State than it is on Cape Hart. And obviously the odds are much, much better when you're only dealing in a two-team race as opposed to if UCLA was truly getting into this, which it didn't. It sounded like he was maybe hearing them out, but wasn't giving them true consideration. And I wouldn't think that they would be under true consideration until he takes an official visit.
Yeah, if I was him, I would definitely take the official visit, interested or not. Free trip to LA, that'd be a great weekend. Some of his parents need to say, "Hey, son, you don't have to go to UCLA, but you need to take this official visit." Listen, I think that you said something. What stuck out to me, and maybe one of the reasons he is lower on the board. He is a small kid. He is. You wonder about his durability in the Power 4. Now he's extremely fast. Ran a 10.44 to win the state 100 meters. Ran his personal best is 10.08, so he can fly. But yeah, when he walked out, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Camden, but I'm not sure that's Camden because that kid is. I think somebody said out there he was 5'9". I would say that's at least. Might be shorter than that, but anyway,
maybe.
Listen,
for Florida State fans, just picture roughly speaking what Jalen Lucas looks like on a football field, and you'll have your answer. And he's obviously he hasn't had 3 years at the Power 4 level, so he doesn't quite have the that Jalen Lucas has even at. He
reminds me a little bit of what Mike might have looked like coming out of into his senior year of high school. He's a receiver.
Really? Mike's taller than that, though.
He is. Mike's got him by a good inch, maybe 2 inches, actually. Yeah. But anyway, he's just a wide receiver from Texas. I was just kidding. Wow. All right, so we think they're in a good spot with Cape Hart if they want him. Obviously, they've got some receivers on the hook, and we'll see what happens there. The next kid we want to talk about probably and I don't mean that out of the kids I talked to, he sounded more like an adult than some of the guys that were interviewing him. Was Johnny Jones, the 4-star offensive tackle from Tampa Berkeley Prep. Listen, if you want to read a kid that's got his stuff together, and I've known his dad for a long, long time, Johnny Jones Sr., who played at USF. But listen, this kid indicated that he's still going to be as deliberate in his this decision process, leaving this official visit as he was coming into this official visit. He is already in the middle of his official visits, and he gave no tells in his interview about what he's thinking, other than I think the big takeaway, he's been to Colorado, he's been to Ole Miss, he's been to Vanderbilt, and now Florida State. He has Penn State and UCLA coming up. And he put it bright, he's going to be a guy that is going to be polar opposite of a guy like Kendall Gravel, who left Texas over 2 weeks ago and has raved about them. And then he comes to Florida State, and now Florida State's at the top, near the top of his list. What Jones did say was between those 6 schools, which are his top 6, right now they're all equal, just because he has not been able to break down what he likes and doesn't like about each of these schools until he gets a chance to go on to their campus. Now, he will commit sometime shortly after his official visit to UCLA, which he anticipates being later in June, and then he'll make his commitment late June or early July to one of those 6 schools. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have any idea what this kid is thinking. I think he meant what he said. He was very complimentary of Herb Hand and was particularly impressed that Herb's had guys that he has started as early as true freshmen throughout his career. So clearly my takeaway from him mentioning that is that early playing time is important to him. With a number of Florida offensive linemen that Florida State is losing at the end of this season, I think that bodes well for Florida State. I think that could get Jones trending in their direction. But certainly a kid that has got as a well-grounded base for going through what he's going through, given the fact that we are now, it's just not recruiting, it's about NIL, combined with the recruiting and the relationships that come with that. I think that Florida State's need for offensive lineman, Nick, stands out to me when it comes to this kid's recruitment. I think that may give them the edge.
Yeah, it's very possible, and I 100% agree with you. Like out of all of the official visitors that we saw this weekend, he might be the most well grounded in terms of kind of being prepared for the ebbs and flows that come with the recruitment process, and maybe that comes from his dad, who obviously also played. Maybe gave him a little bit more of a guideline in terms of what to expect, while being as hands off as possible with his son's recruitment. But what strikes me is, I mean, he's kind of all over the map in terms of where his final schools are. I mean, Colorado, UCLA. Can't remember some of the others that he's been to
Vandy,
already. Vanderbilt, being one of them, and he's kind of all over
Miss.
the map.
Yeah.
Florida State, I do think that distance matters to some degree. So I think Florida State also has that going for them. But you have to respect how deliberate he is in his process. And I agree with you. I went back and listened to the interview. He was a very, very tough one to read. He didn't really let much slip. And I think that it's good. It's good sometimes. Sometimes you talk to kids and they're very clearly on a visit high, and you wait to see them come down to earth a little bit. And there was absolutely no tell with Jones Jr. in terms of apart from what he said about how much he enjoyed the visit and how much he enjoyed getting to spend time with Coach Herpan. So
Yeah, listen, Jones was no tell, and then Sam Rosenbaum was not going to tell.
He was no show.
Yeah, so, actually, Sam Rosenbaum was the offensive tackle from Clearwater High School, and he was in town for his official visit. Now, I just happened to be going into the Moore Center as Sam and his coach, Stor Jaziak, were working their way out of the building. When they saw that you guys were out there, they made a beeline down the hall. And I said, Thor, are y'all taking the back door? And he goes, yes. And I said, I'm assuming Sam does not want to talk. So Sam was here. He looked happy. I can only read body language into his visit. When I saw him in the hallway leaving Moore, he was very anxious about getting away from the beat writers, the recruiting writers. But he did look like he had a smile on his face and was interacting with the staff as I was working my way back outside. So, yeah. We'll see what happens with Sam. Again, that's another kid that he's not a big self-promoter. I think that's kind of goes in line with what we've seen from him since he got the offer from Florida State dating back to 2024. I think he got the spring of 2024. So we'll see what happens there. And listen, Florida State's got no shortage on offensive line prospect. There's no doubt about that. We've got a ton of them coming in this weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the week. All right. The other kid that was in, the other offensive lineman that was in was Jacoby Green, now from Gadsden, formerly of Niceville High School. He transferred over the spring. I think you got a chance to talk with him, Nick. What was your take on Jacoby and where things stand between Florida State? Because going into this weekend, he's another kid kind of like Capehart that you and I think Florida State holds the cards and where this one's going.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't the best interview I've been a part of. I'm going to be honest. Offensive linemen don't typically give great interviews, but I think if you're going down bullet lists and things of terms that you want to know from the. By
the way, Sully and I both take offense to what you just said.
Well, my deepest apologies. I'm so sorry. I'll buy you both a beer. Anyways. No, so he's kind of in a similar boat to Capehart in the sense that he's going to go take his Mississippi State official visit, and then he's going to decide between the two. There's not really another program that's involved here. It's a Mississippi State versus Florida State battle. He was asked whether or not the delayed nature of his committable offer, whether that coming so late may have had some sour feelings there, and he took a little bit he took a beat, and he ultimately said no, but there was a pause there, so I found that to be a little bit interesting. That being said, I still think that Florida State is in a good position for Green if they want to take him. And similar to what I said with Capehart, it's much, much easier for Florida State to hold the cards there when it's a two-team race, as opposed to there being multiple official visitors on the leash there. So I think he valued the time getting to spend some time with the coaching staff. Even though he's been on campus so much, I mean, it's still technically a lot of new offensive staff. So it was interesting from the aspect of the question of whether or not he's a little bit sore about having the offer come so late. But good news for Florida State, and I guess the key takeaway here is that it's Mississippi State versus Florida State. He's going to decide almost as soon as he's done with his official visit to Mississippi State, which I think is the 13th. I'm not 100% sure.
I believe that's correct. Yeah, and listen, his time heals all wounds. He'll get over that if that's what this holdup is. But right now, my read on this situation is he is not at the top of Florida State's board. He's a down the line guy. I think they can get him if they want him. I mean, he's living in Gaston County now. It'd be interesting to find out what the backstory is there. Anyway, I agree with you. I think that this is a battle Florida State can win if they want to. I think he is a guy that wants to be at Florida State. We've known Jacoby for a while. We've seen him on campus a bunch over the course of his high school career. From our interactions with him have been great. But we'll see what happens. I think Florida State with both those kids that are being they're competing with Mississippi State over. I think Florida State holds the cards there. Our last guy that was on an official visit was Brooks County, Georgia, cornerback Travis Stevenson. He is a 3-star prospect committed to Georgia Tech. I'll be honest with you. I did the interview. I know you transcribed the interview.
Not much there.
The long and the short of it was Florida State got in late, which Stevenson thought he was going to get an offer from Florida State last year at elite camp. Did not. Walked away disappointed. Got offered by Florida State in April of this year. And clearly he got over the disappointment, Nick, because he's already been on campus less than 2 months after his offer. This is also a kid that is blowing up late. He got a late offer from Georgia, a late offer from Michigan, and both of those programs are now involved in this. This is another one where really I don't know how to read the tea leaves. He's committed to Georgia Tech. Says he's still in a good spot with them. They know he's visiting. But when you got Auburn, Georgia Tech, and Georgia coming up, Texas next weekend, he's got 4 more official visits, and he's already committed to Georgia Tech. I think this is another. He's a smallish guy. I will say that physically, he was smaller than I thought. He's listed at 6'1", 179. There's no way that kid's 6'1". I'm almost 6'2", and I had several inches on Travis. So we need to go back and change our measurements.
He looked like 5'11", I think.
Yeah,
something around there.
I didn't. Listen, he didn't say about the only thing worthwhile he said was that similar to what Gervell said, they started off on the wrong foot. They've come around. It's kind of changed his perspective, and we'll see where this goes. I think this is another one where is he actually on Florida State's board? Florida State's got some good kids in the secondary. How many corners are they going to go out in the portal after this season? I think that plays a factor into this kid, but he has blown up and is becoming one of the most highly sought after corners in the nation. Again, late offers from Georgia and Michigan, both have scheduled official visits with him. What's your take on Travis after listening to his interview?
Out of all the official visitors that visited this weekend, I think I left with feeling the worst about this one in terms of Florida State's chances. Not necessarily, and I think you're right, and I think that's more Florida State sided. Keeping in mind they already have 3 defensive backs committed already in this class with Sean Johnson, Tadarius Hughes, and Darrell Bell. He's a smaller guy. They have a ton, and I mean a ton because I just got done with the defensive backboard on Friday. They have a ton of elite defensive backs that they're still in line for. I think that he's a down the line option for them. I honestly, even with that being said, I don't know that he would have ended up at Florida State anyway. Like through his official visits, I just didn't get the vibe that I just didn't feel great about where they were heading out of that official visit. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, anything can happen, but I just didn't feel great about it, and I do think that Florida State has better options that they intend to pursue.
Yeah, and I will say this, and I want to. I mean, listen, to some extent, these kids, these kids mature at different rates. You can definitely tell. I kind of felt bad for the kid when we interviewed him because it's clear that he has not spent a ton of time doing that. And some of these kids have, so I just don't know how much we were going to get out of him just because I don't think. Listen, I could not have done that when I was 17 years old. Like I would have been horrible if I had been interviewed at 17. I was interviewed once and it was on the radio. Thank God it was on the radio. But that was it.
And it kind of goes back to what I said the other day about this being a bit of a second recruitment for him. And you can kind of tell when in that sense where it's like you could tell that all of this new attention may be a little bit new and that maybe not going through this process, maybe not used to that as much. And, he's going through a whole bunch of emotions right now. Obviously, he's had a commitment for a couple months and a lot of big, powerful programs are on him. And I just didn't feel great about where Florida State stood with Stevenson after the visit, but anything can happen.
Yeah. So a good weekend for him. No commitments. I don't think I expected any coming into the weekend. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I thought this was more of either just based on how some of these guys have approached it. Roseboro and Jones kind of have a very methodical outlook on how they're going to do their recruiting. I think Florida State leads on 3 of these guys. It's if they are, or at least on the 2 Mississippi State kids. If they want them, I think they can get them. And then, of course, Gerville, I agree with you. I think it's Texas and Florida still lead. Can Florida State make it up? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. They have a huge weekend this weekend. I can't remember, Nick. It's about 14 to 20 kids. I was looking at
19 by my count.
19. All right. So 19 coming in this weekend. Nick and I will have a preview. We got to decide how we're going to break that down. We might split that list up.
It's kind of crazy, and you don't really think about it while you're talking to all these kids and putting in visit dates. But to put this in perspective for the viewers, last year, and even more so the year before, a lot of the big name visits were on June 20th, or I guess that last weekend. And you can always, and there, of course, it was because there was a limited amount of official visits that a university could use. And this cycle, that has been completely out the window. So the last week of official visits was always the big boy, the massive influx of talent where, we got guys at College Town, we got guys at the Moore Center, out back by Doak, because there's just so many visitors, and generally speaking, it's chaos. Well, now with the official visit rule gone out the window, the next 3 weeks are all going to be like that. So it's going to be really hard to keep track of everything. But of course, we will do our best for your reading pleasure, of course. It's going to be 19 kids. The second, or I guess technically the first week of June is a lot. It is a lot. And I am more than happy to see it. Bring them all in, please. It does
not slow down any of the next 2 weekends after that. But we did have some unofficial visit news to talk about. And we'll start with the good news because we do have, I don't know if we have another update on Cam Brooks. But let's start with the good news first. And that is the linebacker Jordan Campbell was on campus for a secret unofficial visit. He's committed to Miami of Florida. Nick, I believe you had a chance to talk with Jordan. What was your take on what he said, and what did he say that makes you think Florida State is a serious contender to flip him from the Hurricanes?
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship. He was here last summer, actually, for 7-on-7 when he was still at Carroll City. Now he's transferred to play for Teddy Bridgewater at Northwestern. And he said at the time, even way back then, he said that he loved Florida State and that Florida State was one of his favorite schools growing up, even with being committed to Miami. And that showed up again when I talked to him yesterday. He said something to the effect of, look, I know that I'm committed to Miami and we're supposed to hate each other, but I love Florida State. And he said, I have no problem coming out and saying that I do have love for Florida State. I think it's been a matter of the communication between the two parties being inconsistent. Remember reaching out to him earlier in February and March, and it didn't seem like the communication was all there. So to see him wind up on campus yesterday, and he didn't just spend yesterday on campus, Pat. He was actually back again this morning too.
Yeah.
So he spent multiple days on campus. He said that he fully intends to set up an official visit, whether that be in the fall or maybe they can squeak it into a midweek. I don't know. I'm sure they were having more talks about that today. But I think this is a kid that is slowly but surely opening up options into his recruitment again. Obviously, Nebraska, I think, has been the team that's been pushing the hardest to flip him from Miami. He's got official visits to Nebraska, Auburn, and Missouri. But with how he spoke about Florida State, it certainly is unique when you talk about when you're talking about a kid committed to one of your most hated rivals. I mean, it just seemed so jovial and lighthearted, and certainly there was a level of business side to it too. I think this is the business also plays into it, and he was very well spoken and businesslike in the manner here. But I have to, and I have always felt this way because of what he said last summer. I felt like if Florida State made him a priority, that they would have a good chance to pull off a flip. And that just hadn't happened until yesterday, until we saw him back on campus for the first time in just under 12 months. So if Florida State, and maybe this is the reflection of how, things are looking on, the linebacker board, because obviously we've had some intel on some of their top targets. Some are trending some ways. Some are some that we thought may take an official visit are not going to take an official visit. Maybe it's a reflection of their board at linebacker. Yeah. But if now is the time that they are truly investing in Jordan Campbell, and he said this is the first time that I've come on campus where I felt like they wanted to see Jordan Campbell. So if they are choosing to invest their resources and time into him, and they're truly showing him love as a priority, obviously I think that goes a long way, and I think they have a serious shot here to flip him. But obviously there's a long way to go. There's more teams involved, and it is also worth noting that he did say, I'm still good with Miami. I was even talking to, I don't know if it was Coach Cristobal that called him or if it was a staffer, but he said as much. They called me when I was on my visit here, and I was talking to them on my visit here. So there's a level in that way. It's also kind of hard to read the tea leaves, because I think he is very much committed to Miami, but he's also, keeping his options open, and, spend multiple days at Florida State knowing that he grew up liking Florida State. There's a certain level of, what do you weigh? Do you level the business weighing of option side of it, or do you weigh, the what he's saying and his fandom and all that? So
it certainly sounds like he could be back on campus for an official visit.
Yeah, I would, if I'm putting a percentage out, I'm putting it like 95%. I think it gets done.
Yeah, well, that'd be big. Keep him in it for sure. All right, so a guy that we don't think they're going to be in on, and it continues to be
a saga.
Yeah, Cam Brooks is now. You learned yesterday while you were at Elite Camp that Cam Brooks has now canceled his official visit, which I believe was scheduled for Florida State for this coming weekend. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. All the weekends run together. Listen, this one just, whatever reason, it's not working out between Cam and FSU, and at least for now, they've decided to part ways. Listen, recruiting's fluid. I don't really know what's at the crux of this. It's one of two things: either, as has been reported, he didn't like the fact that Florida State was slow playing him, or and could be coupled with the fact that I'm not sure that he was as high on their defensive end board as Florida State was on his list of schools. I think they were could have still been going through the evaluation process or relationship building process. But either way, it's not working out. It would not surprise me if we come back in some point during the season and he schedules his official visit. What is your take on the Cam Brooks situation? It now seems to be resolved by him.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was necessarily by him. I think it was a mutual decision. I don't think it was Cam Brooks deciding to cut off. I think it was Florida State and Cam mutually deciding together, maybe it's best that, you know, we go our separate ways here. At least that was what was inferred to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to be careful about what I say here, because there is a portion of it that's water cooler talk between those that know what's going on. But I think that this relationship has been going sour based on, you know, what I heard yesterday. This relationship had been going sour, maybe even as early as in the fall, even before all of this had started. And I do think that to a certain degree, and I don't think that you know, coaches are they're doing their recruiting based on the will and the cry of the people, but I do think that this blew up more than anybody really could have wanted or expected. I think gasoline was thrown on the fire, in between what the kids said in interviews with other outlets and kind of the drama that came from everything. I think that also played a factor. And it could also very well be that Florida State just didn't think of him as highly, or the new staff didn't think of him as highly as the previous staff did. I think that also plays a factor in it too. But I think just the entire different pieces of everything, with the relationship that had maybe been deteriorating for a while, culminating in, you know, Tony White, for whatever reason, not being able to see him in late January, February, whenever that was. He left his official visit when he came in March early. He only stayed halfway through. And, you know, we at the time assumed that, you know, it was just, well, he's been here forever, he probably doesn't need to see practice for the third or fourth time.
Practice, right?
Yeah, and he left early. So maybe now that takes on a little bit of different context. I think with everything that has happened over the past few weeks, I think both sides, and he wasn't sure that he was going to take this official visit. You know, his family was steering him to, you know, give Florida State a second chance and reconsider. But I think after everything involved, both sides came to the conclusion that the recruitment should probably not continue.
Yeah.
So it certainly is. It's an interesting situation, and, you know, I think this happens. This happens maybe not in this specific way, but, you know, sides part ways all the time. You know, it's just not as high profile as this has been for a myriad of reasons.
Well, yeah, I think there's probably things that no one's aware of, right, in the background of this thing.
For sure.
You know, so yeah, I think that there's these decisions are nuanced at times. That, you know, you know, you've got the relationship with the staff, the relationship with the head coach, the relationship with the position coach, the relationship with the recruiting coach, NIL, all these things, and just, you know, so and those are just, I mean, where is he in their evaluation? Where are they with him and their evaluation process of him? Did they want to see something in the fall that maybe they hadn't seen? Maybe we hear fit a lot. We haven't heard his fit as much as we used to, but we heard fit a lot. Maybe at the end of the day, it's just not the right fit for both the kid and the program. And listen, it's not over. They can always circle back. The kid could circle back. He could go somewhere, end up back here in the portal. We've seen that happen before. But I think if it's not working right, don't force it, right? You can.
Yes.
Yeah, just both sides move on.
And in that sense, sorry to interrupt, I think good for Florida State. If you know that it's not going to work out, invest your time and resources in another prospect.
Yeah.
So if the decision was truly mutual, I'm led to believe that this is probably smart on Florida State's behalf.
Yeah. And listen, sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I remember when my father was he recruited Lincoln High School, because back then you let the coach Bowden let the coaches recruit their sons' high schools where they played, so they can go watch them practice occasionally and go to our games. And Kevin Carter, who's obviously Gator All-American, and we couldn't get a whiff out of Kevin, and he just didn't want to be at Florida State. He wanted to get away from home. He wanted another experience. He had been in Tallahassee his whole life. It was as simple as that. He just wanted something different. He wanted a different experience. And I think he was actually, I think one of the reasons he did that was because I think Florida had a med school at the time and Florida State did not. I think that was another part of Kevin's decision. But anyway, that's a long time ago. But, you know, sometimes these things just work out the way they're supposed to work out. And this has been it's been a lot of fanfare over this kid who's been on campus once all year.
Yeah, and that's part of it too for me. It's like we're the barn was raised over one kid when they're bringing in. They brought in 6 kids this weekend. They're bringing in 19 next weekend, and that number is going to hold for the next 3 weeks after that. So they're bringing in 60 to 80 kids on this is one recruit. Hopefully now we've talked about him, I think, every show for the past week. So maybe the saga is finally concluded. But I mean, hell, even they continue to make more Star Wars films, even when you think it's done. So who knows? Right? The saga may continue. I hope not. I think we've talked to death at this point.
Now there were several offers that were made. We're not going to yesterday at Elite Camp. We're not going to get on all of them. I do think there's one that Florida State's fans would find more interesting than others, and that was the offer of Lawrence Timmons Jr., a cornerback, class of 2026, currently committed to Indiana, is the son of Lawrence Timmons Sr., of course, who played at Florida State some 20 years ago. I believe went on and played for the Steelers after that because he is living in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, and plays at Pine Richland High School. Committed to Indiana. You saw him. He's rated the 52nd best cornerback in the class of 2026. What did he say? What did you see? Tell us a little bit about Lawrence Timmons Jr.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk to him at the camp, but I did talk to him this morning, and he's thinking about officially visiting Florida State, which I think is probably the most important thing that you want to take out from that conversation. But he was one of the better guys at the camp that I saw yesterday, and I think that he offers a body type that Florida State is kind of light on in terms of recruiting right now. He's a smaller guy, probably fits in more at nickel than anything else, but he's got great hips, he's got great pursuit, he's very fast, and he had a really nice day. He was definitely one that stuck out, and I think that that'll be one to watch if he does indeed set up an official visit. He's been committed to Indiana. Let me check real quick. It's been a while. I think he committed late last year. Let's see here.
I believe that's 2. I've got it pulled up. So committed. Just committed April, at the end of April.
Really?
Just committed.
Just committed.
Okay. Well, unless his profile had not been updated, and somebody just put it in as a placeholder date. That could
maybe.
It's got 4/30, 2025. Yeah, so recent commit. So so he said.
Oh, it looks like he officially visited in April. So maybe that is correct. I seem to have thought that he was committed long before that. Either way, I certainly don't mind. After getting to watch him yesterday, I certainly don't mind the offer. Certainly don't mind adding him to the board. Like I said, Florida State is kind of light on those faster, smaller defensive backs. Obviously, they tend to trend towards the long, lengthy, twitchy guys. So this is an addition that I absolutely welcome to a defensive backboard that, as we talked about earlier in the show, really stacked with talent.
Yeah. So I think he'll end up back here on an official visit. I think he told you that. Of course, we're going to close out the show because we went a lot longer today than I thought we would. But can you only imagine how long next Monday's show when we go over 19 kids?
We're going to have to pick and choose. There's no way we're going through all 19, Pat. It's going to be a 3-hour show.
Yeah, we'll have to do a quick stock up, stock down version after that. All right. Before we go, I do want to pass on our thoughts and prayers to the families of Bradley Jennings, former FSU linebacker who passed away suddenly in the last couple of days. I don't remember what. I think it might have been Saturday. I'm not positive. But Bradley passed away suddenly. My understanding was talking to a former player is that he had a heart attack and, of course, leaves, I believe, 4 children behind. One of them is Brody, who is a national prospect. So, obviously, one of the best defensive players in Florida State history. Want to pass on our thoughts and prayers to the Jennings family. And then, of course, former FSU president John Thrasher died this past weekend as well, or last week. And we, obviously want to pass on our condolences to the Thrasher family, and our thoughts and prayers are with them as well. So some bad news in that regard, but both did a lot for Florida State in their respective capacities. Lawrence Bradley had a great career, and obviously James Thrasher did a lot in his life. Was ex-military, was a statesman, was a politician for a while, lawyer, and obviously Florida State president, and saw Florida State into the NIL area, and I believe he was the president when Mike Norvell was hired as the head coach at Florida State.
He was the president when I walked. Okay. So yeah, I mean, he shook at thousands of hands over the course of that 3 or 4 day period, but you saw, like, when you shook his hand and he looked at you and you were like, his genuine love for the students in the university, and just a kind-hearted man. I have nothing but admiration and respect for President Thrasher, and I was genuinely sad to find out that he passed away. So, it's hard to, like. I mean, I came to Florida State in 2015, and I think he had been in the position for maybe 2 years or so at that point. And obviously President McCullough, after seeing him a little bit more personally and intently after what happened in April, and also seeing that love for the students in the university, it seems like Florida State is consistently finding well-rounded, personable, smart, intelligent, and above all compassionate leaders for the university. So no, it was genuinely a sad day to learn about President Thrasher passing, and obviously condolences to his family and everybody that he's left behind.
Yeah, we're thinking of all of them. Obviously, 2 special people to Florida State, and I hear that news over the weekend. All right, so the rest of our schedule for the week right now, we are planning to be back with Seminole Sidelines at 3:00 on Wednesday to talk baseball with Kurt and Eric Llewellyn, the voice of Seminole baseball. That is going to be dictated by where Florida State plays their regional. Obviously, if they are traveling, we may not be able to have Lulu on Wednesday because Florida State could travel if they go. They could leave on Wednesday if they're playing in Corvallis on Friday. Obviously, if Florida State hosts the Super Regional, which means USC is coming to town, we think Kurt and Lulu will both be available. If not, what we may do is break up our official visit preview into 2. We could talk about the offensive prospects one day, and then come back on either Thursday or Friday and talk about the other half of the prospects. But anyway, we will have a show on Wednesday. The content yet has not been decided. And then obviously Friday's show will be impacted by what time Florida State plays on Friday, because obviously if they're playing at 3, we are not going to have a show at 3 while Florida State is playing. So, but we will be back each day, either Wednesday and Friday or Wednesday and Thursday, similar to what we did last week, which is tape a recruiting preview. But had some other things I was going to try to get into, but we're at 1 hour and 15 minutes. I want to talk a little bit about Deion's latest comments on his son Shador, which never ends. But we'll talk about that when we got a little bit more downtime and airtime to kill. But Nick, I appreciate it, man. Great job this weekend. Appreciate your help as always down there, and I think maybe as I was helping you more than you were helping me. But appreciate you invite me down there to help.
The learner has become the master.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if I'd go that far yet, but it's like an elevation. Sticking with the Star Wars theme. I was the learner, and now it was. And we're gonna have another weekend of it. We're gonna have another 3 weeks of it. So I will take all the help that I can get, or I will help you as much as I can.
It'll be Sunday before we know it. It'll be Sunday before.
Groundhog
all right,
Day.
Man, Nick, I appreciate it. Hey, listen, if you want to get caught up on all Florida State recruiting weekend stuff, and obviously all our articles from the regional sweep by Florida State baseball, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. We've got a ton of information on the board, recruiting wise, a ton of information on the baseball's series sweep or regional sweep, and then obviously all the articles on every recruit that was in town, minus Samuel Rosenborough, who was in a hurry to get back to Clearwater and left us hanging. But anyway, we appreciate it. Everybody have a great Monday. And remember, pull for USC at 6 o'clock. If they beat Oregon State, Florida State hosts a super regional in Tallahassee. See ya.
Right on.